I returned home from a weekend trip, only to find my backyard had been turned into an impromptu festival. Tables, banners, grills, dozens of people feasting and celebrating as if they had every right to be there. The worst part? The HOA president, Karen, had the audacity to act like she was doing me a favor. "Oh, don't worry, dear, it's all for a good cause," she said, waving off my outrage. That's when I decided to teach her a lesson in property rights. A few days later, she received a special thank you letter from me, an invoice for $10,000 in rental fees. And when she refused to pay, well, let's just say the real fun was just beginning. The drive home had drained me. 3 hours stuck behind slow-moving cars, radio static, an occasional burst of road rage from impatient drivers. It was all I could take. My body ached, my eyes were heavy, and all I wanted was to step inside my peaceful home, take a hot shower, and collapse into bed. As I pulled into my driveway, something felt off. The neighborhood was too lively. Laughter carried through the air, blending with the distant sound of upbeat music. My brows furrowed. This wasn't normal. Then I smelled it. Barbecue. The thick scent of grilled meat, charcoal smoke, and cooking oil clung to the air like a heavy fog. My heart pounded. That wasn't coming from one of my neighbors' houses. It was closer. A bad feeling crept into my gut as I stepped out my car, my exhaustion replaced by something else, an uneasy tension. I moved toward my backyard, my footsteps quickening. The second I turned the corner, my jaw dropped. Strangers. Dozens of them. My backyard, the one place that was supposed to be mine, had been turned into a full-blown block party. People milled about, chatting and laughing, plates piled high with food. My grill, the one I had saved up for and bought last summer, was in full use, smoke rising as someone flipped burgers like it belonged to them. My outdoor dining table had been dragged into the middle of the yard, covered in trays of food, coolers of drinks, and donation jars filled with cash. And the worst part? There were banners. Official-looking HOA banners, right in the middle of my property. My chest tightened as I read the massive sign hanging between two poles. Sunnyside HOA Charity Barbecue. All proceeds go to the community. What the hell? Before I could even process the insanity of what I was seeing, a little kid ran past me, giggling as he tossed a water balloon at another child. My lawn, my carefully maintained grass, was now a playground. My eyes darted to the patio. A group of people sat on my furniture, sipping drinks like they had all the time in the world. A woman even had the nerve to put her bare feet up on my coffee table, laughing at something her husband said. I felt my hands ball into fists. This wasn't just a casual misunderstanding. This was an accident. This was organized. And then, like a cherry on top of this nightmare, I spotted her. Karen. There she stood, right in the middle of my property, chatting with guests like she was hosting a wedding reception. Sunglasses perched on her head, clipboard tucked under her arm. She radiated the kind of smugness that made my blood boil. For a few seconds, I just stood there, my mind struggling to catch up. Was this real? Was I hallucinating from exhaustion? Did I accidentally step into some alternate reality where my backyard had been turned into a public park? No, this was real. And Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, was responsible. I took a slow breath, trying to keep myself from snapping right then and there. My legs carried me forward before my brain even told them to. Karen spotted me just as I stepped onto my own patio. Instead of looking guilty, she had the audacity to smile. "Oh, you're back early," she said cheerfully, as if we were old friends meeting at brunch. I blinked. "Excuse me? We weren't expecting you until later tonight." She gestured around the yard, completely ignoring my very obvious look of rage. "I have to say, your backyard is just perfect for an event like this. It worked out so well, don't you think?" Worked out. She was acting like she had rented my damn property, like this was some arrangement we had agreed on. My voice was tight. "What the hell are you doing on my property?" Karen let out a little laugh, as if I were being ridiculous for even asking. "Oh, come on. It's for charity." I stared at her, my fingers twitching at my sides. "Charity?" She nodded. We organized this event to raise money for the community. Isn't that wonderful? My blood pressure skyrocketed. I didn't agree to this, I said, my voice low. Karen waved a dismissive hand. Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's all for a good cause. The HOA thought this would be a great way to bring the neighborhood together. I clenched my jaw so tight it hurt. Karen, I am not part of the HOA. That made her frown. She tilted her head, as if I had just spoken in a foreign language. Oh, don't be silly. All homes in Sunnyside contribute in some way. That did it. I stepped forward, my voice sharp. No, they don't. My house is not under your HOA. You have zero authority over my property. You and everyone else here are trespassing. A few people nearby paused, their conversations cutting off as they turned to look at us. Karen's smile twitched, but she recovered quickly. Now, let's not be so hostile, she said, her voice taking on that sickly sweet tone. It's just a neighborhood event. There's no harm in a little community spirit. I glanced at the scene again, the trash piling up the scuffed-up lawn, the smoke from my grill filling the air. No harm. I echoed, laughing bitterly. You didn't ask. You didn't notify me. You didn't even have the basic decency to send a text. You just took my property like it was a public park. How is that community spirit, Karen? Karen's face hardened. Well, she huffed. It's too late now, isn't it? Everything is set up. People have donated, and the event is already happening. What do you expect me to do? Shut it down? Yes. Her mouth dropped open, like the concept of consequences had never even crossed her entitled little mind. From the corner of my eye, I saw a couple of neighbors whispering to each other. Some were looking at Karen with concern now, realizing that maybe, just maybe, they had been duped. Karen squared her shoulders. Look, she said, forcing a smile. Why don't you just relax? Get yourself a plate. Enjoy the food. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. I wasn't going to scream at her in front of everyone. No, I was going to handle this another way. I gave her a slow, knowing smile. Oh, don't worry, Karen. I'm going to handle this exactly how it should be handled. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked away. I could feel Karen watching me, probably expecting me to storm off in anger. But I wasn't angry. I was planning. Because Karen thought she could use my property for free, she had no idea what was coming. The audacity of this woman was unbelievable. My fists clenched as I stormed toward Karen, who was busy chatting with a group of guests near my patio, as if she hadn't just hijacked my property. She didn't even notice me at first, too busy laughing at some joke she had made. When I was close enough that my shadow fell over her, she finally turned, her face lighting up in fake delight. Oh, you're back early, she chirped like I was some unexpected guest crashing her event. We weren't expecting you yet. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. My jaw tightened so hard it ached. Excuse me? My voice came out sharper than I intended. But I didn't care. Why are you on my property? Karen waved a dismissive hand, her smile never faltering. Relax, dear. It's for charity. She gestured around, as if the sight of strangers eating and drinking at my expense would somehow soothe my rage. We figured since your yard is so spacious and unused, it was the perfect place. She said it so casually, as if she were talking about her backyard, her space, her decision. My fingers curled into fists. I turned slowly, scanning the chaos she had created. People were still eating, drinking, enjoying themselves, completely unaware of the storm brewing. My grill, the one I had spent hours assembling last summer, was in full use. Someone was flipping burgers like they owned the thing. My patio furniture, the expensive set I had treated myself to last year, was occupied by a group of people sipping wine, laughing like they were at a vineyard. Even my cooler, filled with my drinks, was wide open, strangers helping themselves without a second thought. I took a slow, steady breath, my nails digging into my palms. You figured. My voice was eerily calm. You never asked me. This is trespassing. Karen actually had the nerve to roll her eyes. Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's community spirit. She gestured to the banner hanging above the donation table, proudly displaying Sunnyside HOA Charity Barbecue. And since you're part of the HOA, I'm not part of the HOA, Karen. That wiped the smugness off her face. She frowned, tilting her head like I had just spoken gibberish. Oh, don't be silly. All houses in Sunnyside contribute in some way. I could feel my pulse hammering my ears. I am not part of the HOA. My house is not under your jurisdiction. You have no right to be here. None. The way her eyes darted away, just for a split second, told me she knew that. She knew she had no real authority here. But of course, Karen wasn't the type to admit she was wrong. Neighbors nearby had overheard our conversation. One man, Jason, stepped forward, a plate of food still in his hand. Wait, so she didn't get your permission? His brows pulled together. I shook my head. Not even a text. Jason blinked, clearly realizing the situation was not what Karen had made it seem. He looked at the woman beside him, an older lady named Diane, who gave Karen a sharp glare. Karen, you said the homeowner agreed to let us use the yard. Karen's smile thinned. Well, more people started paying attention now. A few heads turned, conversations hushed. A woman near the drink station whispered to her husband, her eyes darting between me and Karen. It was spreading, the realization that Karen had lied. Karen crossed her arms, trying to salvage what little control she had. Well, it's too late now, she said briskly. The event is already happening. People have donated. The food is cooked. You wouldn't want to ruin something for charity, would you? My eye twitched. Karen's tactic was obvious. She thought she could guilt me into letting this slide. She was banking on the fact that shutting down a charity event would make me look like the bad guy. I slowly exhaled through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. This isn't about charity, Karen, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. This is about you deciding that my property was yours to use. She lifted her chin, her voice turning haughty. Well, I didn't think you'd mind. That's because you never asked. The growing crowd was definitely not on her side anymore. Diane scoffed, shaking her head. Karen, you've really overstepped here. Karen let out an awkward laugh, but her confidence was cracking. I crossed my arms. You know what? You're right, Karen. She blinked. I what? It's too late to change anything now. I gave her a slow, knowing smile. But don't worry, I have the perfect way to fix this. Her eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I didn't answer. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked away, letting her stew in confusion. She didn't know it yet, but this little charity event was about to cost her a lot more than she ever expected. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to steady my hands. Every instinct in my body told me to shut this down right now, to kick everyone out, to call the cops, to make a massive scene that would put Karen in her place. But that would only make me look bad. Karen had built this entire event on a lie, and if I lost my temper, she would twist the story, painting herself as the innocent HOA president just trying to help the community, while the angry, selfish homeowner ruined a charity event. No, I wasn't going to play into her hands. Instead, I was going to play it smart. I pulled my phone out and started taking pictures. The banners, the donation jars, the trays of food set up on my tables, the people lounging on my patio furniture, and, most importantly, Karen herself, standing proudly in the center of it all, chatting with guests like the queen of the neighborhood. I zoomed in on a massive sign hanging between two poles. Sunnyside HOA Charity Barbecue. All proceeds go to the community. Oh, this was gold. I casually strolled around the yard, snapping pictures while pretending to check my phone. A few neighbors had already figured out that Karen had pulled this out of thin air, but most were still clueless, enjoying their food and drinks without realizing the entire event was built on stolen property. Fine, let them enjoy it. Let them party. Because once this was over, Karen was going to get a very expensive wake-up call. I kept my distance, sipping a drink, one of my own drinks from my cooler, mind you, as I listened to conversations. Yeah, Karen really went all out for this one. She said the homeowner was totally on board. She told me the guy volunteered his backyard. Guess not. Do you think she's going to get in trouble for this? Oh, absolutely. I smirked to myself as I scrolled through my gallery, making sure I had all the evidence I needed. The hours passed, and I waited as the party went on, waited as Karen laughed and networked, waited as people kept donating money that wasn't going to me, the actual owner of the damn property. And then, finally, the event started winding down. People began gathering their things. Kids were being rounded up. The tables were getting cleared. I leaned back against my patio railing, watching as Karen, still glowing with pride, clapped her hands together. Well, everyone, she announced loudly, thank you all so much for coming. Your donations are going to make a huge difference in our community. Let's give a round of applause for everyone who pitched in. The crowd clapped, some cheering. Karen basked in the attention, beaming like a damn celebrity. And then she said the magic words. See you all next year. Oh, I've been waiting for that. I pushed off the railing and spoke just as loudly. Don't forget, Karen, I'll send you the invoice for this rental space. The noise died instantly. A few people laughed awkwardly, thinking I was joking. Others just stared, waiting for Karen to respond. Her smile froze. She turned to me, her eyes narrowing. Excuse me? I crossed my arms, keeping my expression dead serious. Oh, you thought this was free? That's adorable. I let the words hang in the air, watching as realization dawned on the crowd. You used my property without permission, so I'll be sending you a $10,000 rental bill. Karen's entire face twitched. You can't be serious. Oh, I am. I took a step closer, lowering my voice just enough that only she and the nearby guests could hear. You host an event here, Karen. That costs money. A lot of money. And since you failed to get a venue, I guess you'll have to pay for the one you stole. A few neighbors whispered, some shifting uncomfortably. The ones who had already figured out Karen was lying, they were eating this up. Karen's hands balled into fists. This is ridiculous. What's ridiculous is thinking you could use my private property like a public park. I smirked. Don't worry, Karen. I'll send you an itemized breakdown. After all, a venue this size? The city charges far more than $10,000 for event rentals. Consider this a discount. Her face was bright red now. You're being unreasonable, she hissed. No, Karen, I said, my voice dripping with satisfaction. I'm being generous. She stormed off, but the damage was already done. The whispers were spreading fast, neighbors exchanging shocked glances, muttering things like, wait, she didn't get permission? She's going to have to pay that, right? Holy crap, she really thought she could get away with this. Karen's smug little event had just turned into a public humiliation, and this was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in a long time. Karen's little charity barbecue was a disaster, but in the best possible way. I had the photos, the evidence, the proof. I had made my point, and now it was time to drive it home. I spent the morning preparing the official invoice, the one Karen thought I was joking about, the one she would definitely take seriously once she saw it printed out, with a neat, professional letterhead. $10,000 for unauthorized use of private property. I hit send on the email to Karen's HOA office, CCing a few key neighbors and, just for good measure, the city office, where I knew they'd appreciate the details. The email was clear and professional, but the number was undeniable. I leaned back in my chair, smiling to myself as I imagined Karen's face when she opened that email. The joy of knowing she was about to get a serious reality check was almost too sweet. But when I checked my phone later that afternoon, I saw that Karen had already replied. Her response? It was exactly what I expected. $10,000 for what? You're insane. It was a charity event, and you are just trying to take advantage of the situation. We will not pay this. Consider this dispute closed. She thought I was bluffing. Big mistake. I wasn't about to let this go quietly. I immediately got to work. I contacted a lawyer, someone I knew could get things done quickly. Within the hour, I had a formal demand letter prepared, detailing the trespassing and unauthorized property use. The letter also warned Karen that failure to pay would result in a lawsuit, and I made it clear that the $10,000 was just a start. I had no intention of letting this slide. As if that wasn't enough, I also filed an official complaint with the city. I made sure to note that Karen had failed to file for a permit for the event, and that it had been a violation of zoning laws. If she thought she could get away with hosting a public event without any paperwork, then she was about to get a rude awakening. By the time I was done, I knew Karen was probably fuming. But what really gave me satisfaction was seeing her once loyal neighbors slowly starting to turn. Word traveled fast. Neighbors who had once praised Karen for her community efforts were starting to ask questions. I overheard a few of them talking in hushed tones, clearly realizing that Karen had misled them, that they had been part of something illegal. They were starting to understand that they could be held liable for participating in an unpermitted event. People I had known for years now looked at Karen with disappointment. Her once favorable reputation in the neighborhood was crumbling, and it didn't take long for the whispers to spread like wildfire. The next day, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the name on the caller ID was unmistakable. Karen. I answered it on the first ring. "Hey, can we talk about this?" she asked, her voice unnervingly sweet. I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. You know how much I care about this neighborhood. This was all for a good cause. I didn't even let her finish her sentence. "No need to talk, Karen," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. "You owe me $10,000. You can either pay the bill or we can go to court, but I'm not negotiating." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, followed by a sudden rise in her voice. "You can't actually charge me for that. It was a charity event," she practically shouted. "I was just trying to help the community." I had to fight the urge to laugh. "Then feel free to collect donations for your legal fees, too," I said, not missing a beat. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I knew she was caught off guard. She hadn't expected me to fight back like this. She thought she could bully me into letting her get away with it. Well, now the tables had turned. She sighed dramatically. "This isn't fair, you know. I'm doing this for the neighborhood. And you're just—" "Karen," I cut her off, my patience wearing thin. "I've already made my decision. Pay the bill, or don't. But know this. If you don't pay, I will make sure the whole neighborhood knows exactly how you took over my property without asking and try to get away with it. I will make sure the city knows, too." I paused for a moment to let the words sink in, enjoying the uncomfortable silence that followed. "Don't test me," I added quietly. "I'm not someone you want to mess with." Her voice was shaky when she finally spoke again. "You think you can destroy me like this? You think the neighborhood will side with you?" I couldn't help but smile. She was starting to get desperate. "I think they're already starting to realize the truth," I said. "You've misled them, Karen. You've lied to everyone in this neighborhood. And once they know what you've done, you're going to be the last person they want to support." Her breath hitched in the silence, and I could almost hear her mind working overtime, figuring out how to salvage the mess she created. But the truth was, there was no way out for her now. I hung up the phone, knowing full well that Karen was going to try to sweep this under the rug. But I had already taken the first steps to make sure that she'd never be able to do this again. That's when I realized something. It wasn't just about the $10,000 anymore. It was about making sure she never tried this again. About ensuring that no one would ever take my property without permission. And in a strange way, I was starting to enjoy the process of turning up the heat on Karen. She had been riding high on her HOA power for too long, thinking she could manipulate everyone into doing her bidding. But now she was about to learn a lesson in accountability. Karen had always strutted around like she was untouchable, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, making rules that no one actually agreed to, acting like she had the final say on everything. But now, she was in deep trouble. The HOA board had finally caught wind of what she had done, and it wasn't pretty. I hadn't even needed to tell them myself. Word spread fast after my little invoice stunt. Neighbors started talking. People asked questions, and soon enough, the board was forced to address it, and they were not happy. The next HOA meeting was packed. Normally, those meetings were boring. A handful of residents complaining about grass height and mailbox colors, while Karen sat at the head of the table, pretending to care. But this time, it was standing room only. People were angry. Karen sat stiffly at the front of the room, clutching her clipboard like it was some kind of protection shield. But even she knew there was no getting out of this. The HOA president, an older woman named Linda, stood up and cleared her throat. "Before we start the regular meeting," she said, her voice tight, "we need to address some unexpected complaints we've received." A few whispers rippled through the crowd. Karen shifted uncomfortably. Linda turned toward her with a blank expression. "Karen, would you like to explain why we're getting calls from the city about an unpermitted event hosted by the HOA?" Karen froze. The tension in the room shifted. You could feel it. The weight of dozens of eyes now locked onto her. She stammered, forcing a smile. "That's just a misunderstanding. The city is overreacting." One of the board members, a guy named Dan, let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, really? Because I got a fine notice this morning for an unauthorized public event held under the HOA's name. Did you even file for permit?" Karen's fake smile vanished. She swallowed hard. I was going to, but there wasn't enough time." Linda pinched the bridge of her nose, clearly trying to keep her temper in check. "So, you mean to tell us that you threw an entire HOA-sponsored event without any official approval?" Karen bristled. "It was for charity. Why is everyone acting like I committed a crime?" A woman near the back scoffed. "Because you lied, Karen. You told everyone the homeowner agreed to it." I smirked from where I stood, watching as Karen struggled to regain control. Dan crossed his arms. "Let me get this straight. You threw an HOA event on private property that wasn't even part of the HOA, without permission, without a permit, and now the entire board is on the hook for legal complaints." Karen flinched at how bad it sounded when someone else said out loud. Linda shook her head. "Karen, you put the entire HOA at risk. We never approved this. You made this decision alone. And now we're dealing with the consequences." Karen opened her mouth, probably to argue, but for once in her life, she couldn't come up with an excuse. The whispers were turning into mutters now. Unbelievable. She really thought she could get away with it. She's going to get us all sued. Karen looked panicked now. Her power was slipping. The control she had manipulated for years was suddenly vanishing right in front of her. And that's when she tried to fix it. The next day, I got a text from Karen. "Karen, hey, can we talk? I want to settle this." I didn't respond. An hour later, she showed up at my door. I let her stand outside for a full minute before I finally answered, taking my sweet time. She had the nerve to look friendly, like she hadn't just spent the last few days dodging accountability. "Listen," she started, her voice syrupy sweet. "I know we got off on the wrong foot, but there's no need to take this any further. I wanted to apologize for the mix-up and offer a solution." I raised an eyebrow. "A solution?" She forced a smile, reaching into her purse and pulling out an envelope. "I'm willing to offer $1,000 as a goodwill gesture. You know, just to smooth things over." I stared at her. Then I let out a low chuckle. $1,000? I repeated, shaking my head. "That's cute, Karen. But you and I both know that's not even close to what you owe me." Her smile faltered. "Oh, come on. This is more than fair." "Nope," I said flatly. "It's $10,000, or I take you to small claims court." Her eyes widened. "You wouldn't." I cut her off. "I have photos, witnesses, and legal proof. You lose either way, Karen." For the first time, real fear flashed across her face. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She swallowed, gripping the envelope tighter. "This is extortion." I laughed. "No, Karen. Extortion is when you use someone's property without their consent and then try to guilt them into letting it go. This is just consequences." She stared at me, her face twisting between anger and desperation. I stepped forward, lowering my voice. "You have two choices. Pay the full amount or watch me drag your name through every legal channel I can." Her breath hitched. She knew she had lost. Without another word, she spun on her heel and stomped back to her car, her entire body tense with frustration. I watched as she slammed the door shut and sped off, tires screeching down the street. I didn't smile just yet, because Karen's downfall had only just begun. Karen had always been the type to act like she was above the rules, the queen of the HOA, the self-proclaimed enforcer of community standards. But after everything that happened, after all the lies, the trespassing, and the legal threats, she had finally reached the one place she never thought she'd end up: defeat. It started with the email. I hadn't even demanded a public apology, but apparently the HOA board did. After the city slapped them with fines for hosting an unpermitted event, they were desperate to distance themselves from Karen's mess. They made it very clear that she either owned up to her actions or stepped down entirely. And Karen? She did both. The email landed in everyone's inbox early in the morning. It was short, clipped, and clearly written under duress. Subject: apology regarding HOA charity event. Dear Sunnyside residents, I would like to formally apologize for the recent charity event held in our community. Unfortunately, I made an error in judgment regarding the location of the event, and I take full responsibility for any misunderstandings that arose. I regret any inconvenience caused to the homeowner involved, as well as to the HOA board and the greater community. Going forward, I will no longer be serving on the Sunnyside HOA board, effective immediately. I appreciate your understanding and support as we move forward in a positive direction. Karen L. I read the email twice just to enjoy the lack of smugness in her tone. Karen, the same woman who had laughed off my invoice, the same woman who told me I was being unreasonable, had been forced to publicly admit she was wrong. And it got even better. By noon, word spread fast. I got texts from neighbors who were gleefully gossiping about the fact that Karen had been forced out of her own position. And, of course, she had to pay up. After our last conversation, she caved. Whether it was fear of losing in court or just pure humiliation, Karen sent me the full $10,000. The check arrived in an envelope with no note, no apology, nothing. It didn't matter, because at the end of the day, I had won, and I knew exactly how I was going to celebrate. I used every penny of that money to throw a proper backyard party. The right way. I got the permits. I hired a real caterer. I sent official invitations to the whole neighborhood. Everyone was invited, except Karen. The night of the party, my backyard was packed. People mingled, laughing and drinking, finally able to enjoy an event that wasn't based on lies. At one point, Linda, the HOA president, clinked her glass, grinning at me. Well, she said, I have to admit, this is a much better event than the last one. A few neighbors laughed, raising their glasses. I smirked. I think I agree. And then, as if the universe wanted to give me one last gift, a familiar figure appeared at the gate. Karen. She stood there, arms crossed, clearly debating whether she should just walk in and pretend like nothing had happened. The audacity of this woman never failed to amaze me. I walked over slowly, making sure she saw me before she could try anything. She forced a smile. Nice party. I smiled right back. Thanks. Too bad you're not invited. Her eye twitched. Oh, come on, she said, voice tight. This is childish. I tilted my head. Karen, this is private property. Hope you understand. Then, without another word, I shut the gate in her face. She stood there for a second, her mouth open like she was going to say something, but then she just huffed and walked off. The moment she disappeared down the street, I turned back to the party. I raised my glass. To private property, I said loudly. The crowd cheered. A few months passed, and life in the neighborhood felt different, better. Without Karen constantly butting into everyone's business, things were peaceful. The HOA, desperate to save face, started making real changes, including a new rule that no single board member could make unapproved decisions on behalf of the community. I had almost forgotten about Karen, until I heard a juicy rumor floating around the neighborhood. Apparently, after losing her position and getting publicly embarrassed, Karen had tried to fight back. She had spoken to a lawyer, hoping to sue me for emotional distress. It was laughable. The case was so weak that her lawyer reportedly refused to take it. No one wanted to fight a case where she was clearly the one in the wrong. With no power, no reputation, and a whole neighborhood against her, Karen did the only thing she could. She put her house up for sale. I wasn't surprised. She had burned every bridge in the neighborhood. She couldn't even walk outside without getting side eyes and whispers from people she had once bossed around. And just like that, she was gone. Her house sold within a few months, and a new family moved in, a quiet couple who had zero interest in HOA politics. One afternoon, as I stood on my patio, enjoying the peace and quiet, my neighbor Diane walked over, grinning. "Well," she said, sipping her coffee, "looks like we finally got rid of our little HOA dictator." I smirked, raising my glass. "Looks like it." As the sun set over my Karen-free neighborhood, I took a deep breath and smiled. This was my home, my property, my rules, and no clipboard-wielding tyrant would ever take that from me again.